we got a preview of Michael Crow, who I think we could all agree was an impressive individual. Unfortunately, United Airlines, yeah, do I need to say anything else? And Michael actually ended up coming to Israel for like 36 hours to be here. Flight was supposed to have left late tonight. But we already knew last week that United had canceled his flights, and when we rebooked, anyone here have to rebook their flight? Anyone here not have to rebook their flight? There you go. You came on El Al from New York, right? There you go. From Rome. But he graciously agreed to do the interview because it was really important for me that you learn about this incredible man and what he's done in higher education. And then afterwards, I'll try to close it up. So we taped the interview yesterday morning in my office, which is why I couldn't go bike riding or running or walking. I really do like exercise, sort of. But this is why I was doing this instead. So I'm here in my office with Arizona State University President Michael Crow. Unfortunately, because of United Airlines and many other things, we had to change around our schedule.
Right.
You're supposed to be joining us live right now, but at least we're here to tape this so that we can take, and I really want to thank you, first of all, for making the efforts, which were not small, to be here with us in person for the honorary doctorate ceremony. Thank you very much.
Happy to be here.
And congratulations.
Honored to be here.
You know, as I told our audience 2 days ago, I'm starting now my 6th year. You've been doing this for over 20 years at Arizona State University. I just can't imagine how you could be doing this. You've taken a university that was not known among the elite universities of the United States, among the world, and really turned it into one of the elite new Ivy League universities of the world. In scientific research, social output, everything. And our universities have had a long-standing collaboration in the fields of health, of cybersecurity, and of course of desert studies, both universities being here in their own deserts.
Right.
So first of all, welcome to Ben-Gurion University.
Happy to be here.
Welcome to our desert, and congratulations on the honorary doctorate.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So, 20 years in the job.
22.
22 years in the job. Who's counting?
Yes,
Right. It just feels like yesterday.
Yes.
You've taken this university, your university, from one place to another. As we're going into 2025 soon, what do you see, what challenges do we still have in higher education? What are your challenges still in leading Arizona State University?
Well, you know, Danny, the challenges of all the universities that are public facing and have public duty and public responsibility is to be as adaptive as everything that's changing around us. The economy is speeding its change trajectories. Technology is changing. Social complexity is accelerating. What we think of as work is changing. What we desire as the outcome of our democratic society is becoming more important to us. And so the universities have got to keep up with all of that. The universities have got to find a way where they're anything but historic, anything but classic as their basis. They have classic components and historic foundations, but they have to be high speed, highly adaptive, and highly engaged with finding a way for people to learn throughout the entirety of their life. So we're in the business of reconstructing the university to be this intense organization for teaching, learning, and discovery, which has a lot of students on campus, about 84,000 next academic year.
Amazing.
And then hundreds of thousands of other learners that we have from all over the world, turning the university into this well, if you will, in which people can come to learn at any point of their life.
You know, the naysayers would say that higher education is irrelevant. All of our youngsters can get whatever they need online. What do they need the universities for? There's some who say that actually working in high tech, you don't need an education today. With artificial intelligence, anyone can write a paper. So
those are seriously uninformed individuals, so they don't understand the complexity of the tasks. I mean, the worst thing that we could do is only train someone to code and not train them about what it means. The worst thing that we could do is find a way in which a person is robotically engaged in algorithmic formation and then think of that as a life. That's a piece of a life, a part of a life. And so higher education in whatever form it takes is, in fact, if you look at educational history, it used to be that, well, women couldn't read. They weren't allowed to read. It used to be that no one needed to go to high school. And then after a while, we realized that human potential is linked to all forms of learning and some forms of higher education. And so I think what we're seeing there are people who are oversimplifying the world and who don't really grasp the totality of what we mean by an educated person.
So I want to take that one step further. I hadn't planned on going into this, but you mentioned, being citizens of a democratic society.
Yes.
And often higher education, we feel that we have a target on our back. And I hear it also in some of the discourse in the United States. Those elite, they're not connected to what the country needs, what the society needs. Mm-hmm. How do you answer that?
I think that there are those universities that are a little bit in the doldrums right now. They're out of the main channel of social progress, and they think that they're not. And so there has been a disassociation of the universities from showing respect to the rest of society that supports them. There's been a disassociation from universities in terms of finding pathways for students from every family to be able to attend. And so what I find in our own analysis in the US and in Arizona is that the angstiness around higher education is often a form of disappointment. It's a form of, well, why do you cost so much? Why can't my children go to your university? Why is the taxpayer burden, extraordinary, whatever it happens to be? And so what we have to do is listen very carefully to what people want. If you ask people about aspirationally what they want their families to be able to do or to achieve, we know in Arizona 90% of the people want a pathway to college for their children, 90%. The other 10%, that's fine. 90% is quite a consensus. And so we're operating under the consensus of aspiration as opposed to the complaint about underachievement.
Consensus of aspiration. I'm going to borrow that, I think. And so if we talked about the evolution of higher education, that it was originally hundreds of years ago a bunch of people asking questions, talking among themselves, the elites, and then a profession evolving into a professional school. You've studied the evolution of higher education. You've written papers and books about it,
right.
And you talk about a new wave of higher education, what you call the fifth wave.
Right.
Can you take us through that evolution and how this influences your role as president?
Well, I mean, it's a strange sector, the higher education sector, because it's not like corporations that come and go, and certain forms of companies used to exist and they don't exist, and whatever the great companies were 200 years ago, nearly none of those exist today, but the great universities of 1,000 years ago still exist. And so what we see is that there's two types of evolution going on. There's evolution going on within certain waves, what we think of as types, and there's evolution going on relative to time. So in the US, the wave one schools were the small Greek academies that used to be what Harvard was and what Columbia was and what Princeton was and Oberlin College and other places like this. And those were wave one, fully immersive, small scale colleges. Wave two was the emergence in the United States of public universities and colleges of lots of different types. Teachers' colleges, state universities, community colleges, and so forth. And there's hundreds and hundreds of these that are still in existence, still evolving, still moving forward. So then the unique American thing was what we call the third wave, which was the establishment during the American Civil War in the 1860s of the land-grant colleges and universities, of which they set up about 50 or so, and then they built a bunch of other ones after the Civil War for the African-American community at the time. Those became schools focused on egalitarian access, engineering emphasis, agriculture emphasis. And then the United States, which didn't give PhDs until the 1870s,
really,
then decided to build research universities, and 3 of them were started by philanthropists, so Johns Hopkins, Stanford, and Chicago. And then once those got started, immediately there was a 20-year window in which Harvard, Michigan, Berkeley, Columbia all became research universities. That was the fourth wave. And then some universities, including ASU, which was a second wave school, became a fourth wave school. And then the fifth wave is really, how do you build universities that are of unbelievable scalability and service to the nation? How do they scale engineering? We've gone from 6,000 engineering students a few years ago to 32,000 engineering students today. We graduated 7,300 engineers this year. And so
has that come at the expense of other universities?
No, not at all, because other universities aren't scaling or don't have the means to scale or the culture to scale or the technology to scale. So The answer is no. And so, the drive for educational attainment is basically it's unlimited. I mean, the person that wasn't an engineer that wants to be an engineer, the person that didn't study English that wants to study English, the person that wants to study, history and didn't. And so the market is unlimited, basically, from our view. And so these new kinds of fifth wave universities are those that scale, respond to national needs, respond to what's needed to drive the economy forward in accelerated ways. And so that's what we mean by the fifth wave.
And how has that influenced the way ASU has evolved? It's definitely scaled larger, but it's much more than just scale.
Yeah, it's more than scale. So we changed we have a charter that's built around three core ideas: inclusion versus exclusion for the success of the institution, measuring the success of the student, research to benefit the public, protect the country, advance the country. And then the third element of our charter is to take responsibility for the communities that we serve. So the health and well-being outcomes, the national defense outcomes, the economic development outcomes, you actually taking responsibility. So those three elements of our charter then have then allowed us to then change the design parameters of the institution. So our faculty have eliminated 85 department schools or colleges and built.
And you've remained in the job.
Yeah.
Wait a second, I want to say this out loud.
Yes.
You've
eliminated
85 academic departments.
Schools and colleges.
Schools and colleges, what we would call academic departments.
And then we built.
And you've remained president.
Yes, and we built 40 new ones.
Built 40 new
And then the 40 new ones then have allowed us, for instance, we've taken our research from $100 million a year of research expenditures to $1 billion a year of research expenditures through these intellectual designs. And so it's not just scale.
Can you give me an example? This is fascinating for me. An example.
Sure.
Because you're not getting rid, I'm assuming,
no,
you're not getting rid of a discipline.
No. So let's take geology. So we had a pretty good geology department, top 25 geology department. But they didn't have very many undergraduate students. They didn't have, they weren't going to go up in the rankings. That's kind of an endless, worthless kind of waste of time. And so we said, what's the core intellectual idea in geology? And they came back to us and said to me, exploration. So then I said, who are the other explorers on campus? Well, astronomers are explorers, astrophysicists are explorers, astrobiologists are explorers. So we took some of our engineers building spaceships are explorers. And so we took all the explorers and we built a school of Earth and space exploration. We changed everything. We went from a handful of degrees to many degrees. For instance, in astronomy now, we used to have 15 or 20 majors in astronomy. We now have 700 majors in astronomy. We took our research from a tenfold increase in research, more than tenfold, through a new intellectual design. We now have, we've had over 50 off-Earth missions that we've been a part of. We have 20 that we're a part of right now that are off the Earth, still in motion, and we have 3 or 4 that we're the director of, like the mission to Psyche, an asteroid that's completely made of metal. And so our exploration school changed its pedagogical identity by allowing exploration to be the pedagogical driver. In sustainability, we built an outcome-oriented school. We built a new school around anthropology. We eliminated the anthropology department and built a school of human evolution and social change. And we added faculty and added technological capabilities and added intellectual breadth to the unit. Built where we had 1 degree, now we have 6 degrees. And so we've built hundreds and hundreds of undergraduate degrees, almost 500 undergraduate degrees, almost 500 graduate degrees, allowing students to have more pathways to learn. And then for our faculty, with technology to help them, with new designs, with them in the driver's seat as their intellectual designers. We've eliminated the notion of petty academic bureaucratic politics, which are destructive to progress. And so we've allowed them to become intellectual designers of that which they want to pursue intellectually.
We could probably stay for 3 hours on this topic, but
Sure.
we have to get on with our day, unfortunately. But I wanted to just go back to one other thing about your fifth wave vision.
Yeah.
Talked about taking responsibility for society.
Right. So,
but isn't that what government is for?
No, government is a decision-making body which then allocates resources and power among and between people to have certain kinds of achievements. Within that, they might build and fund a university, but the university can just sit and operate as a generic factory of just people graduating. Like, who cares? I mean, that's insufficient. And so if let's say you have underachieving communities within the nation state. Let's say you have K-12 underachievement in certain populations. Well, if you graduate all the teachers, and you graduate all the principals, and you graduate all the superintendents of the school districts, then you're responsible for those outcomes. not the ethnicity of the family, not the income level of the family, not the religious background of the family. You're responsible at the university because you produce the design, the system, and the people that man it or staff it. And so by taking responsibility, it means you then go back and look at what we're doing. So we're changing everything in K-12 education. We're changing how it's designed, how it's built, how it operates, who we produce as a teacher, how we track the teacher's outcomes. I mean, those are all the things that we're doing.
So when we voted upon in the university to offer you the honorary doctorate, this was before October 7th. We thought we would only be able to talk about the incredible things going on in academia. But over the past 7 months, unfortunately, we've been witness to some troubling trends in academia. Universities clearly are gathering points for people of vastly different opinions, backgrounds, aspirations. We've seen troubling images, and that gets most of the traction on television and in the news. Where I started my degree at Columbia, where you were
as a faculty member. Yeah.
Faculty member. But there have been other universities like Arizona State University, which haven't made the news, unfortunately. I mean, for the good things going on. So how do you see academic leadership with what's going on right now across American universities?
You know, I can't speak for all of the universities. What I can say is that some universities seem a little bit lost in differentiating what genocidal speech or hate speech or religious intolerance or the lack of historical understanding, and they equate that to the social complexities of the continued evolution of the United States as if they're equivalent. They're not equivalent. They're not the same. And so when genocidal speech has been proffered on our campus, we don't allow it, and people are sanctioned. When people assemble to build encampments that are symbolic of something that are outside of the university's guidelines, we just take them down and say, you're free to express your views, you're free to call for this or that, call for a change in the government, call for a ceasefire in the war in Israel, do any of those kinds of things, but you can't express hate speech because that's not free speech, and you can't overtake and take over the campus and become a place for violence.
So what is the role of higher education, universities in the United States? Again, coming from Columbia University with its history of the SDS and then what was going on in '84 and what's going on now, what role can American universities have in actually promoting an understanding of democratic dialogue?
Well, we have to go to be the complete bastions of what Roosevelt referred to as the four fundamental freedoms, 1941, when he articulated as why we fight fascism. And so it was to protect freedom of speech, to protect religious preference and expression, to protect freedom from want, and to protect freedom from fear. And so what universities don't do is they don't spend enough time ensuring, in democracies in particular, that they are laying the ground for the protection of those four freedoms. So what does freedom from want and freedom of fear mean? Freedom of fear means you cannot have people who are in their charters, like Hamas, basically stating that their purpose of existence is the elimination of another group based on their religious background or their ethnic background. I mean, that's unacceptable. And any university or anybody leading a university that doesn't see that is not protecting freedom from fear. And so universities have to be much more leadership oriented, much more leader driven, much more fact driven than they have been lately.
Again, that's something else I wish we could spend hours on. But I want to go back now to the evolution of higher education and the connections between BGU and ASU. Again, we don't take it for granted that you're here specifically with us today, and you brought a large delegation with you. I've looked at the parallels between BGU and ASU, our challenges, with Ben-Gurion University being in Israel's most disadvantaged or the poorest metropolitan region, dealing with a difficult region in terms of accessibility to higher education. How can you see our two universities working forward from strengths to leverage the success of both universities?
So the last thing the world needs are more universities that are like the universities that came before them, because they got us to where we are, which wasn't far enough. And so to go the additional miles that we have to go, to get to a society which is more equitable, to get to a society which is more productive, to get to a society which is wealthier and more distributive in its wealth to the broadest section of the society, requires new kinds of universities to take on the assignment of making certain that students are not left behind. So we've built robots that teach calculus. We have unbelievable systems now that we teach biology.
Wait a second, robot, you're not talking about teachers who teach like robots.
No, we have robots that teach calculus. And so they're not physical robots, they're digital robots, but nonetheless they're teaching calculus. And so what we found then, therefore, is that it doesn't make any difference what family the student comes from. You know, we have thousands of students from the indigenous communities in the United States called Native Americans. Thousands and thousands of students. We have 20,000 students with family incomes under $30,000 a year. They have no ability to even finance how to live at the university. So what we've had to do is to construct a university which basically operates under the assumption that nearly every human is a gifted individual. They have an unbelievable supercomputer between their two ears. So we operate under this theory of abundance rather than this theory of separation and selection through the achievement on a test of a 17-year-old. Or how well you did in some high school, or the fact that your parents had a lot of money and they could send you around the world to learn and whatever. And so what we've done is what we need, and BGU and ASU are universities devoted to this and dedicated to this. So how do you build a faculty as good as the university faculty anywhere, research scholarship as good as that which goes on anywhere, and then but how do you at the same university then make those universities accessible to all of these people who have been left out for economic reasons or social reasons or ethnic reasons or cultural reasons or what have you. And so, I mean, that's what we've been focused on in the 22 years that I've been at ASU.
I can't think of a better place to stop for now because you articulated beautifully what our mission is, why we do what we do. And I think it's really important for everyone involved in the university, whether it be the administrative staff, the technical staff, the faculty, and our supporters, or the industries around us, to appreciate that we're here to change the world.
Well, what people don't really fully grasp is, for all that we've achieved, how much we haven't achieved, how much we could achieve. And all we have to do is find a way to overcome these education opportunity gaps. And once we do that, I mean, the economy of the planet's around 100 trillion. Well, why isn't it 1,000 trillion? Why hasn't it done all kinds of things that, you know, why is there still poverty? And people think that they have some sort of kind of worthless explanation for why there's still poverty. There's still poverty because we haven't figured out how to educate everyone yet.
Michael, I know you've been an inspiration to a whole generation of younger university presidents across the world, across the United States. You're an inspiration for me in what we're trying to do here. And I really want to thank you for taking the time for being with us.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll let him know of your response to this interview. Yeah, wow. So when Chaim and I took the mantle of Ben-Gurion University, him exactly 6 years ago almost, me 5.5 years ago, we set as our goal for Ben-Gurion University to become the premier research university in Israel. That was our strategic plan. I talked about this in my opening statement. This was for a number of reasons. We came to this, and many of you know why we put our emphasis on the research. But October 7th shook us all in ways that we've been up and down and crying and laughing over the past 3 days. As we look forward, where is Ben-Gurion University going from here? Where are we as a global community going from here? And what can we take from Michael Crow? Now, Ben-Gurion University is not going to be a university of 83,000 students. Ben-Gurion University functions in a different economic, educational, governance system that's very unique to Israel. I was talking about this with Chaim yesterday. If we would want to make 2 new degrees next year, it would take 5 years of bureaucracy in the Council of Higher Education, 4 years maybe, if we're lucky. We're a very controlled system. But what we're not controlled by is what our aspirations are and what we realize what our role is. And realizing that there is no contradiction at all, and Michael elucidated this, to being a premier research university. What did he say? He took it from $100 million to $1 billion of research output. And being a premier university committed to the society. I alluded last night to the fact that after October 7th, Ben-Gurion University filled a void left by the government. But actually, maybe we didn't fill a void left by the government. Maybe, as he said, the government isn't supposed to be in those voids at all. Maybe the problem is that we've been waiting for the government to solve our problems. And that some more than others are completely irrelevant in solving society's problems. And so that we as Ben-Gurion University, we've actually always been Israel's fifth wave university. We just didn't know it. We were put here by governmental decree to develop the Negev. Now, at some points in our history, we may have gotten too enamored with our social approach and forgot that there's also a very important academic research aspect to being a major research university. But now as we go forward to the second half of this term of my presidency, the second half of Chaim's term as rector, this understanding that whether we want to or not, we have to embrace, whether we're ready to or not, we have no choice but to embrace that Ben-Gurion University must be Israel's premier research university. And you've heard examples this past 3 days which have left you wowed. And at the same time, there's no contradiction to that, to being Israel's premier university for being committed to the future of the country, and that we take responsibility for that. We saw incredible examples of that this past 3 days when our social work department, the Spitzer Social Work Department, decided to found within a week an accelerated class for social workers so that there'd be more social workers in the country. We were being a fifth wave university without even thinking of it. When we took the Medical School of International Health and made it a Hebrew language, but still keeping it an English language for Israelis, Medical School for International Health, we're being a fifth wave university. When we opened the Department of Occupational Therapy, we're being a fifth wave university. When we're building companies that are going to develop in the Negev, we're a fifth wave university. When we take research and make a new drug, what did they call it, a silver bullet against cancer, we're being a fifth wave university. And when we built the new School of Education last year, we're being a fifth wave university. And I haven't even mentioned the word Bedouin, because we're already taking that for granted, that this is what we are doing as part of us as a university. So it gives me incredible hope. Who was it who said the difference between an optimist and what? Oh, I was quoting someone. Oh my God. As the esteemed Jeff Kay once said, an optimist. You don't need courage to be an optimist. You need courage to have hope. And I think that what I have experienced from all of you is a deep sense of courage, a deep understanding of the courage of our students. Who was it who said to me today, how are all your students so incredible? Because they all have hope. If they didn't have hope, they wouldn't have showed up for this. They wouldn't be doing what they're doing. They all do believe that their future will be better because of what we're doing. And as we go forward with our way forward, the way forward is not a philanthropic campaign. The way forward is our definition of hope for the future of Israel. For us to be Israel's fifth wave university that will lead from the Negev. I want to thank you all for being here with us. I heard from Jeff, who heard that Another university north of here had trouble filling rooms for their board of governors, and we didn't have enough rooms. That's the BGU spirit. We're a little afraid what Hadass was saying, that she's crying because it's ending. And, what are we going to do? Let's all pray together that all of the hostages will be back, and that next year we have the biggest party that we have ever had at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. Thank you very much.